Hello everyone, I am Muftah Ahmed Alhddad, an Associate Professor, Department of Archaeology, Faculty of Arts, az-Zaytuna University, Tarhuna, Libya. Today I am going to talk to you about this topic, risk assessment of Gholaia cultural heritage site and the proposed risk reduction intervention. The importance of protecting and preserving cultural heritage sites in Libya. Many cultural heritage sites in Libya face various anthropogenic and natural hazards. These risks can cause significant damage and alteration to cultural heritage properties, which, if lost, cannot be replaced. Taking in our consideration the many challenges facing the new Libya, it remains unclear what the future will hold for the cultural heritage. Therefore, it is not surprising that cultural heritage struggles for recognition and protection. Today, the protection and preservation of cultural heritage sites is a strategic priority, not only for the purpose of preserving heritage for future generations, but also because it is a fundamental resource supporting the national economy and an important source for sustainable development. As UNESCO has stated, it is very important to monitor cultural heritage sites and their landscapes, particularly in areas with substantial anthropogenic activities, and to integrate this control process within an organized and managed administrative plan. Anthropogenic and natural threats to cultural heritage in Libya. On this slide, we see some photos taken during our last archaeological field survey that we conducted in March this year, 2022, at the Jebel Gharian. Here, we see some natural and human hazards that have been happening to many cultural heritage sites in this region. The top left two images show natural threats such as wild plants and landslide. The other images indicate the high risk facing archaeological sites in this area, where the majority of sites are facing a human threat, especially bulldozing and illegal excavations. Gholaia Njem site location. This site located some 300 kilometers from the city of Leptis Magna, which was the Emperor Septimius Severus' native city and one of the thriving cities of North Africa. Njem was built as a part of Severian reorganization of the military on the frontier of Roman Tripolitanus. Njem, which was circa 200 kilometers due south of Cape Misurata, was an important staging point on the way to the Libyan oasis at the limit of farming and pastoral lands. The fort was therefore located on the main trade routes from Tripolitania into the Deep Sahara, to the southwest towards Zalla via belt of oasis of Jufra region, namely Sokona, Hun, and Wadda, from whence one could choose to take the desert routes towards Egypt via oasis belt of Ojla, Jarbub, and Siwa, or again southwest to the Fizan oasis belt, the land of ancient Garamantes, who themselves were connected into a much wider network of trans-Sahara exchange. So rather than acting as a closed defensive border, the evidence from Njem shows us an open frontier and close cooperation with all local tribes, as well as tribes to the south. This is not unusual for the period, since connections between the Sahara and Tripolitania pick up from the mid to second half of the 1st century AD. At the same time that the Libyan predecessor develops, as well attested by the abundance of Roman imports in burial assemblages and sites in the Libyan oases belonging to the Garamantes tribes. The fort was built upon the arrival of the army on the 24th of January AD 201 and remained occupied by a garrison consisting of about 360 men of the Legio III Augusta until shortly after AD 259 and before AD 263. From Francis Lyon was the first European travelers who recorded the site in 1801 and painted the Fort Northern Gate when most of its elements were still standing. The site was the object of a French mission in the 1960s and 1970s, where the archaeological mission uncovered the most features of the Roman camp. This French mission was under the leadership of Muftah. Muftah suggesting that the fort was probably built in the area of a caravan stop provides a plausible reason for its location and the subsequent rapid development of settlement around it, as the fort is also located at the edge of the desert and at a strategic point of entrance into Tripolitania. The fort and nearby settlement were protected by a surrounding wall and covered several hectares. At least 2 residential city blocks were built on an orthogonal grid, and the settlement extended over several hectares. At least one of the explored buildings served for commercial purposes, and glass, pottery, amphorae, lamps, and other goods have been found. Beyond the city, several temples were located to the north and east. To the north, sanctuary dedicated to Jupiter Ammon, divinity connected with the Oasis trade, together with clusters of ceramic remains potentially associated with settlements. Remote monitoring and documentation of Njem archaeological sites. This work aims to monitor and assess the risks to Njem cultural heritage sites. Also aims to address the problem by using the tools of remote sensing techniques and GIS application. Also understanding cultural heritage sites within the context of the surrounding terrestrial landscape. And provide effective data to detect changes, including risks and threats. Also then develop an organized, manageable, and effective plan that reduces those risks, predicts future threats, and helps decision makers to develop successful policies for the protection and preservation of cultural properties. Njem archaeological site and its landscape. On this slide, I show you what has happened to the Gholaia archaeological site and its surrounding landscape. Before 2010, the site was like this. There are are two main features can be seen on this satellite image: the Italian colonial period fort in the west and the Roman period fort in the northeast. But after 2010, the site view was completely changed when 192 hectares of land allocated for construction of a new archaeological project, of which about 68 hectares were located within the boundary of the archaeological site. Because the main object of the work is to conduct systematic monitoring of risks, whether human or natural, through analyzing their spatial distribution with the archaeological area of Njem, remotely monitoring the site to identify type of hazard, when they begin, and their impact on the site and landscape by using free satellite imageries. Because most of the archaeological features of the site cannot be visualized by these mentioned satellite imagery resources, other high-resolution imagery resource applications such as Google Earth Pro and Sensor Planet, where a 25 centimeter resolution can be obtained. After remotely digitizing the visible archaeological features using a quantum GIS program, the remotely human and natural visible risks have been identified and tracked. After digitization of the remotely visible archaeological features in a QGIS program, the remotely human and natural visible risks have been identified and tracked. The dosed area identified and digitized, which can be seen in this image. The second risk was farms that created within a new agriculture project. The third risk was natural risk, sand dunes. Data processing and data analysis were based on these steps implemented in QGIS environment as follows. First, creating multi-ring buffers for each risk area. A buffer ring was set at every 5 meters within a radius of 500 meters to a total of 100 rings around each risk area. Second, converting vector data to raster data. Vector data layers converted to raster data in order to gain geometric measurements, which a pixel size of 5 meters. A gray color raster layer was produced where pixels of dark colors indicated the closest distance and the bright colors for the farthest distance to the risk area. Third, reclassification of the raster risk layer to specific levels. The pixels in the layer were reclassified based on a specific distance to 10 categories. The type and extent of the disturbance were determined by this process, which has become one of the most important and successful methods used in the remote monitoring of different phenomena and detecting changes and risks, not only in cultural heritage, but also in other several fields. So these figures show the three risks and the combined map. Combined risks created in this map, which combined the three risks, where we could see many archaeological features are within the very high and high risks. So by this method, risk levels were classified by the spatial distance of the pattern from 0 into 5 categories, from very high to no risk, represented on a color scale from red to green. This classification follows the Cultural Heritage Risk Index presented by Porino et al., who examined hazards to cultural heritage sites caused by climate change, where value 1 is equal to no risk and value 10 is equal to very high risk of threat and damage to cultural heritage sites. After finishing the remotely monitoring and remotely risk assessment work, a primary report written and submitted to the Department of Antiquities in March 2021 that highlighted the remotely identified risks, their impact on the site, and several recommendations to reduce risks and stop threats. One of the main recommendations was the need to do a field work. So, in October 2021, a team from the Department of Antiquities and I visited the site and worked there for 5 days to do a risk assessment on ground and to evaluate the risk and compare the field work results with the remotely identified result. One of the main results of the ground and field work was producing a risk map combining the two works, the remotely work and the ground work. Another main object for the field work was creating awareness and promotion of cultural heritage, which was a decisive subject of our field work, to make the local community understand the value of this cultural heritage sites. So the Department of Antiquities fieldwork team and the local community, some local community members worked together on the site, and at the end they agreed on, first, to stop the accomplishment of the agriculture project within oasis of Njem, and also agreed on the issue of the importance of protecting and preserving this cultural heritage site. Second, they agreed on establishing a buffer zone for the site where any activities or changes can be done without permission and supervision of the responsible authority. And third, they agreed on development a permanent monitoring plan for the site using remote sensing and GIS techniques to monitor risks and predict any potential threats. Finally, they agreed on keeping the communication between the two parties and make frequent field visits to the site. Thank you for attention.